Mirkwood is a place in the legendary world of J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's also fairly well known to be a place in Norse myth, or as people often say, in the Norse sagas. Although it only really has a part in the Norse sagas because it is a place in very old Norse poetry. We have to remember that the sagas are very often reworked stories that appear in old poems, and those reworkings are done in the 1200s, 1300s. But sagas are written in prose, just like The Lord of the Rings is. The poems in which Mirkwood is mentioned are uniformly pretty old. We have the poems Helgakvida, Hjorvar Sonar, and Atlakvida in the main manuscript of the poems that give us the Poetic Edda, the principal stories that are preserved in Old Norse about the Norse gods and heroes. And we see there that there's this phrase that seems to be associated very strongly with it. It's Hris Thatit Mara. That occurs in both Atlakvida 5 and in the poem that in Old Norse we usually call Hlotskvida, or in English often the Battle or War of the Goths and the Huns. It appears in the two sagas of mythical heroes that I translated in 2021. So this phrase means the famous forest, and Atlakvida 5 and Hlotskvida magnify that to Hristatit Mara Ermeder Mjukvid Kalla, the famous forest that men call Mirkwood. In Atlakvida, we also have it called Mirkvid in Okuna, Mirkwood the unknown. And its name, by the way, is exactly what it sounds like. It is Mirkwood, Mirkvidr. That Mirk word that we have in English is actually borrowed from Old Norse, although it's a very old word in Indo-European. There are cognates in Hittite, the oldest Indo-European language preserved in writing. In Lokasena, one of the poems about the gods, we also have Mirkwood mentioned in the Poetic Edda. In stanza 42, Loki says, Gulli kaupta lets du gimis dotr, og selder þitt svo sverð. He's talking to Freyr. In muspelsunir rida Mirkvid yfir, veitsta þú þó vessal hve þú vegr. So he says, you had the daughter of Gimir purchased with gold, and you sold your sword. And when Muspel's sons ride over Mirkwood, you don't know, you poor one, how you will fight. This is because in mythology, when you give something up, you can't really replace it. So Freyr gave up his sword to his servant Skirnir to woo his wife, and now he won't have a sword to fight with it at Ragnarok. But Mirkwood appears there, as in the heroic poems and sagas based on them, as a borderland between warring forces, whether the gods and their enemies or the Goths and the Huns, two ancient peoples often discussed in Norse poetry and sagas.